So now I'm definitely on. What I started to say was I like songs that talk to me. I guess that's the reason why I was never a headbanger, like Pastor Rick and Rob and Jeff, and it's just that Jeff's music taste will surprise you. I guess because I like the ballads, like the ones that talk to me, that cause me to think. And when I heard that song, it caused me to think. And I like memories. Memories are, I think, some of the best things we can have in our lives. And turn me to Acts 16. We're going to get into a little bit more of that now. But I love songs that can cause me to reflect on my life, not necessarily life in general, but my life and what God has gifted me to be able to be a part of. In Acts chapter 16, verse 31, it says this, and they said, believe in the Lord Jesus Christ, and you will be saved, you and your household. Now, we know that, this is my opening text, but we know that was talked about as the chains were being rattled, the gates and things, and Paul and Silas were praying, and he says, the jailer's saying, what can I do? He said, just believe in the Lord, and not only you will be saved, but you and your household. And fathers, that's our responsibility, for us to come to know Jesus in a way, in such a powerful way, individually, on our own, that changes not only us, but our households and the households of our future. If you don't mind, I'm just my entry is just going to be a little bit more reminiscing, I guess. You might. In that song, it says, you just might miss your babies growing up like mine did, turning into moms and dads. And when you get to the season in your life that you are there where they're moms and dads, it's interesting to look back and see the transformation of those kids that we had. I know, and looking at my children, I have a special memory for each one of them. I know Rob being the oldest, and the problem is I got shortchanged about a year of his life. First part of his life because of the military. I was overseas and they were here. But I can remember when we brought him home, I got scolded because Debbie had decided to do some part-time work because we were in the Army, we needed extra money. And she came home one night and I was laying on the floor with Rob right next to me and we were both asleep. And I got scolded for having him on the floor and laying there asleep. You might have rolled over. I would have known if I'd have rolled over on him. It'd have been a bump. It's like but I can remember too, the first diaper I ever had to change was Rob's, right? And I can remember Debbie standing in the doorway of the house. I was at the changing table, and it had started to take odor. Okay, you know what I'm saying? The first couple of times a baby poops, there's nothing to it. There's no odor, no nothing. But then when it first hits you, and the first time that there is, it's like, I'm like this, Debbie. I can't do that. Debbie, she's in the doorway just laughing. I'm not, and I can't leave him because he's on the changing table. So I'm serious now, Debbie. I'm starting to get sick. I can't do this. And it's like, so I guess, and I can remember also with Rob a time we were in the Army up in Savannah, Illinois, and we'd been out playing with the neighborhood kids and playing football, and Rob was out there with me, and all of a sudden I turned around and he was gone. I didn't know where he went. Well, I thought, man, I need to find out where he's at. And I went to the house, went back to the apartment, and he was in the house. And Debbie said, well, he got tired of you ignoring me and playing with the older kids. And I remember that crushed my heart to think that I had maybe done that to him. And then we had the daughter that come along, and I remember the night she was born because it was very special. And every child that you have as a father, you don't get to carry them. You get to be introduced to them when they come out of the womb, and that changes your life. Each child changes your life. And we dads, we're involved in the pregnancy. We endure the pregnancy just like the women. Am I right? No. Aaron? Aaron said, I'm not even answering. He said, I'm not saying a word. Rob was getting scared because he thought I was going to ask him. I decided the best part about it was leave you alone today, Rob. You're already in enough trouble for not doing nothing. But it's like, when she was born, she was the first girl in 35 years in the Martin family. So it was a special night for me, and I couldn't wait to tell people. And I can remember looking at some of the pictures of childhood. I remember the times where she would just, I remember one time she came home and we got in her a little easy bake oven, and she had made me a cake. Those are memorable moments. She's an excellent cook today, but back then it was, not sorry. But she had to have Daddy. He had to have that cake, and things like that. And then there's Zach. There's always Zach, the baby. And that's really the right way to say it. And then there's Zach. I was a corporal punishment kind of guy. My dad was capital punishment, so I thought I had downgraded something. But Zach, one time he got in trouble, and we were living in Morton here over on 4th Street, and I sent him up the stairs because what I had changed from my dad, I would use their little belts instead of my dad using this huge strap.
What? That's a lie.
And so I said, it's all in your perspective, right? So I sent Zach upstairs to get his belt so I could spank him. And he was gone for the longest time, so I'm getting madder by the second. What is he doing? He needs to be down here now. He comes down, and he's got a tear running down one cheek. He's holding out this little bitty belt. It's about that long. Holding out a little bitty belt about that like that. And he hands it to me. I said, turn around. He turns around, and there was a teddy bear head sticking out the back of his pants. Now, you cannot spank a kid with a teddy bear head. I said, to keep from laughing, I said, just go upstairs. You're grounded for the rest of the day. He didn't get a beating that day, but probably deserved 2 for that. But it's just those. There's many, many more, and I'm not going to bother you with that. I purposed when my dad. I have fond memories of my dad. My dad was quick to judge. He was quick to forgive. But I remember one time we were sitting out in the front yard of the neighbor's house, a bunch of us boys, and one of the older boys encouraged the other younger boy to hit me where you shouldn't hit no boy. He did, and so I retaliated. And I'm not a fighter. Never have been, never will be. I don't like it. Any form of fashion. But it's like, and so I started to retaliate on Merle. My dad was watching out the window. I didn't know that. Called me home, and then he started yelling at me, and I'm going, and I think what happened with me, I was a crier. And so as soon as I started crying, he'd get madder, because boys don't cry. That's the way he was raised. Boys don't cry. So, but anyway, one of my favorite memories of my dad is a Saturday night. And we're sitting there, and our family room was just a little bitty room, wasn't really much bigger than this space right here, actually. And he's laying on the couch asleep. My dad worked 2 jobs most of my life. And that was good at report card time, because if the report cards fell during the week, I wasn't going to see them until Saturday. If they fell on Friday, I had to sleep in on Saturday so that I didn't have to deal with this Sunday, because I wasn't the greatest student. Anyway, we'll get away from that. But I remember that Saturday night, I'm laying there, we're watching TV, and my dad's asleep, fell asleep on the couch. I don't know where my brother was at all, but I'm laying there, I'm sitting there back against the couch, and his arm was hanging down, so I started just messing with his hands, started feeling his hands, because my dad was a working man. He had those tough hands and stuff like that. And I'm sure that the smell, the scent that was on his hands had a lot of things to do with work. He was a smoker, so all that combined in gave his hand a unique smell. And I remember, and I know this sounds weird, but I remember as a young boy, that was the closest smell, because my dad was not a touchy-feely kind of guy. He just wasn't. And to me, at least I didn't think he was. And I just remember laying there, and as the sun was dropping in the sky, and it was getting darker in the room. And that's probably one of my favorite memories of my dad. And he didn't get a chance to even experience because he was asleep. But that's okay. I got it. That's all it was for me. I didn't have but one grandfather, because my mom's dad died a year before I was born. But I can remember my grandfather. Now, I'm telling you all this for a reason. I want you thinking about your memories. So I have to share mine for you to get to thinking about yours. And I remember my grandpa Martin, the summer before he died, we were down there, and my mom and dad, I think I may have told the story, but my mom and dad and my aunt and uncle decided they were going to go to Nashville to go to the Grand Ole Opry. And we had just got there. We weren't there a whole day, and they decided they're going to the Grand Ole Opry in Nashville. And my grandpa was not happy at all. So I don't know if this was retaliatory or he just wanted to have some fun. So my cousin Randy and I decided, hey, my grandpa chewed tobacco, my grandma chewed tobacco, my aunt chewed tobacco. They all chewed tobacco, okay? And it's like, and so it's like, and they dip snuff. Now that I don't know what that is. So I just, but anyway, Randy and I came and said, well, can we try that? Can we try some tobacco? And he said, no, your mom and dad's will skin me alive. He said, and I said, no, come on, no, we won't. He said, okay, I'm going to let you try it, but 2 things you can't do. First, tell your mom and dads. Second, don't swallow. Now, when you give anything to a kid in their mouth, what are they first going to do? They're going to swallow. So that tobacco juice goes down our throat, and we're puking off the side of the... And he's sitting in his rocker on the porch, rocking back and forth, just belly laughing at us. And there's one thing we didn't do. We didn't tell our parents. But it was just always a reminder that heritage is important. The Bible talks about heritage. The Bible talks about the fathers, and the Jewish tradition of the patriarch is so important to the family. Enoch, in Genesis chapter 5, verse 21, Enoch states that he's the father of Methuselah. Now, you know who Methuselah was, right? He lived the longest of any human being ever. And his father was Enoch. And in Genesis, and then 22, it talked about that Enoch walked with God. He had such a relationship with God that they pointed out that Enoch walked with God. And then in verse 24, it says, and God took him. He was so close to God. His love of God was so strong that God didn't allow him to experience death at that time. Now, he's one of the 2 coming back. Him and Elijah are coming back. And they're coming back at the end they do have to die. Because the word says that it is appointed to man to die once, and then the resurrection. They're going to die, but they're going to die as witnesses to the coming king. And Noah was Enoch's great-grandson. Noah was Enoch's great-grandson. So Noah, we know who Noah was, right? And again, a patriarch within the family. Look at Genesis chapter 6, verses 7, 8, and 9, basically. He talks about Noah and how he lived before God. It says, so the Lord said, I will destroy man with whom I have created from the face of the earth, both man and beast, creeping thing. I wish you'd get rid of the creeping things right now, to be honest with you. Creeping things, birds of the air, and for I'm sorry that I have made them. Verse 8. But Noah found grace in the eyes of God. Now that grace poured down through his generations. His great-grandfather, Enoch, he didn't know, but he heard his grandfather. He heard his father talking about his great-grandfather Enoch and how what a relationship he had with God. And that grace was so part of Noah's life that he experienced the blessing of being the beginning of a new thing, the beginning of all the rest of us. Go on to verse 9. It says, this is the great the genealogy of Noah. Noah was a just man, perfect in his generations. Noah walked with God. He got the same epitaph as Enoch. He walked with God. He walked. That should be, as a Christian father, that should be our desire, is that we are known by our children as he walked with God, so that they someday can be known as he walked with God. Should Jesus tarry and my youngest grandson grows up to be a man and has children, they're probably not going to know me, but they're going to know, hopefully, that great-grandpa Martin walked with God, that he loved God. Abraham is called the father of all who believe in Genesis chapter 12. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. You hear that so much because they are the patriarchs of the children of Israel, the patriarchs of our faith, and of the people of Israel's faith. To this day, Israel honors these 3 fathers very much. They still honor them, the house of Israel does. But they weren't perfect fathers. You know, Abraham made mistakes. Isaac made some mistakes. Jacob made some major mistakes. Okay? And yet, they honor them because of their love of God. Joshua, another man of God, father of, and it says that he trusted God when others didn't. And he made a proclamation that we do from now on, that we have over the years, and that Israel does. As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. That's a declaration. Now, what is your house? Does that mean just those that live in your house? No. Your house expands over the years. One of the things that Deb and I did in raising our kids is we chose to try to produce a very close-knit family. the five of us. When it was the five of us, we liked being together. I don't know, my kids could tell you, they might have some bad memories, I don't know, but my grandsons, they got some good ones now, don't they, huh? Yeah, every Menards they go by, Grandpa, you want to stop? Grandma, can he go to Menards? You know, and it's like, and then, but we put a smile on his face this week. We went to a restaurant that had a really pretty waitress, and they were smiling. You could tell they were teenagers, because this pretty waitress caught their eye. Grandpa not so much, but, you know. But, you know, Joshua said, hey, if I do nothing else right in my life, if nothing else accounts for who I am, if nothing else is going to be written down about me in the years to come and my family history, is that my house is going to serve the Lord. Now, what does that mean? Can you dictate to you? We as a parent of young children like Aaron and Bree and Rob and Crystal and Jeff and Sarah, yeah, you can sort of dictate to them, you know, what they're going to do and what they're not going to do. But there comes a time where you can't do that anymore. I bump up against a lot of that in counseling, is where a parent tries to now become a parent when it's too late, really. They've already lost that opportunity. And so, but you don't have to bully them to do what you're going to do. You can't look at them with a scornful face when they don't want to be a Cubs fan. That's called abuse, actually. But the thing is that you want to impress upon them the best you can every right thing that's out there. And I know as parents, as fathers, we make mistakes. My dad made some mistakes, but I'm no worse the wear for his mistakes. I went into the Army, and I didn't have to be taught how to say yes sir, no sir. I didn't have to be taught how to say hey, yes ma'am, no ma'am, because it was instilled in me. I can remember I didn't have to be taught how to act in public, because we'd go out to dinner, and I remember one time down in Lincoln at the Tropics. It was one of my dad's favorite restaurants. And we'd go down there on a Sunday afternoon and take Grandma Bloom down there, and we'd go down to eat, because that was family day. Sunday was family day. We'd always pick up Grandma Bloom, we'd go eat somewhere, because my parents worked most of the other days. And so we go out, and I remember one time where the waitress came up to us and to my parents and said, your boys are so polite. They are so nice. You are so lucky. And I thought, you think that's lucky? It's lucky if we do something wrong. It's lucky if we live. You didn't embarrass my dad. But I remember I had a wholesome fear of my dad all my life. I was in the Army. And I was living in an apartment. I was getting ready to leave for Vietnam. I had 45 days at home, and I was leaving for Vietnam to the end of my life. You know, that's my feeling. And I had became a smoker while we were married. And we had a little apartment in Washington for that 45 days, and we were married. And somebody had pulled up and was talking to me, and I had became a smoker while I was in AIT. And I hadn't ever smoked before that. Well, one time in 8th grade, my dad caught us, and we decided better to live than to die. But and so I'm sitting. I was hiding it from my parents that I was a smoker. And so I'm standing there talking to somebody, and then my dad pulls up, and I've got a cigarette in my hand. I'm not thinking. I'm just as a net. And my dad, the other person left. My dad steps in. He looked at me. He looked at that cigarette. And said, "What you got in your hand, boy?" I hid it behind my oh my God. But that phrase, "What do you got in your hand there, boy?" It was like, oh no, I'm gonna be beat. You know? But it's like, but it's like I had an honor. I wanted to honor him. It was my fear of him as a child. I don't want to say that it was fear, but I guess it is sort of a fear. But it wasn't a bad fear. It was a respectful fear. That's what it was. But as I grew older, that respect became more of, I don't want to do things that would cause him to think less. It was already bad enough that one time on leave, I'm sorry, these ain't even my notes, just memories popping up. Home on leave, and we're sitting around the dining room table. We're over there, and I think Rob was born, and Stevie was born, and that was it. And we're sitting there talking, and my brother and I start talking about all the things we did in high school. Smoking pot, all that kind of stuff. And you didn't hear that, right, boys? And it's like, And my dad, you could see his countenance just changes. I said, what's wrong? He says, I used to tell people my sons would never do stuff like that. So, you broke his heart. The thing is that the power that I believe that I'm the father I am today because of my dad. I believe that. And that's the excuse for the whippings I used to give my kids at any rate. Turn to Psalm chapter Psalm 103. And we're going to look at verse 13. We're going to take a short journey here. I'm not going to keep you long today because it is Father's Day. I know people have plans, but I want to share a few verses with you that I think are important to their power verses for fathers. Actually, I believe these are. In Psalm 103, verse 13, it says this. Now, in the New King James and the King James, the word that it uses actually means compassion. It says, as a father pities his children, so the Lord pities those who fear him. He really says the compassion. As a father has compassion on his children, so does the Lord have compassion on those that fear him. Our example of being a good father is God. The best example we can have is the example of God in our lives and how he treated his son, how he treats us as children of God. And so his compassion on us needs to be extended into our families, into our children that we love to. Now turn to Ephesians chapter 6. And I've got more than I'm going to share. I've got more on paper here than I actually am going to go through, but these are power verses for fathers today. Ephesians chapter 6 says this, and we're going to look at verse 4. And you, fathers, do not provoke your children to wrath, but bring them up in the training and admonition of the Lord. Now, trust me, you know this as fathers, that when you reprimanded your children, they got mad. They didn't like it. But one of the things I tried to do every time when I was a kid, when I was a young father, is when I reprimanded my children, is after a period of time, a short period of time as much, or not a very long period of time, is try to call them over and say, okay, come here. They may be still wounded from the beating or whatever, but they may be still crying. So I come over and I hug them. I say, no, I love you. I don't like punishing you. I don't like doing that. But I had to do that. Now, if you don't misbehave, then we don't have to have this anymore. Now, you all know Rob. That never necessarily sunk in real well, and what I'm saying is, what's funny is too, is children. You got 4, right? And you got 3, right? By the time you get to that last one, they're either very smart or you've got wore out. And I think on the term of Zach, both happened. Zach watched his brother and sister get in trouble. So Zach, he flew under the radar. All but one Mother's Day, which cost him. He got a black eye. I didn't give it to him, his mother did. But thing but it's like, he'd fly under the radar. He would
That's not fair to just leave that out.
All right. All right. What happened was Zach had done something he shouldn't have done, and I said, man, and I was already upset. I do have to admit, one time I had to go pick him up at the county jail because they were out mudding a bunch of them, and they took him and they didn't get arrested or nothing. And I said, why didn't you call me? Why didn't you tell me it was, instead of getting that? He said, I said, I have a phone in my car. I have a phone myself all the time. I pull up my phone out of the car, popped him right in the head. It's like, I don't know if it left a mark or not. But then Debbie, on Mother's Day, he had done something wrong. I said, well, you're going to, yeah, very wrong. And I said, you're going to have to tell your mom. You're going to, and you have to, and I stood there, and she was not, that was the maddest I've ever seen her, Zach, actually. And it's like, she got mad. And she went to smack him, backhand him, I guess it was. Now, mind you, he was 17 years old.
No, he said something, and I went to smack his
That's
face.
right.
And he put his hand up, and I can't remember exactly how it happened, but he put his hand up, and then it hit himself in the eye because I slapped his hand. And then he went to school and told his buddies that he got in a fight with a guy with some.
They jumped me.
Yeah, they jumped me.
This big guy jumped me. This big guy jumped me. And now imagine this. He was about as tall as he is today, and and it's like, but so anyway, but I don't know what I got on that. But the thing is that you have to. Where were we at here? Let me get back to where I wanted to be. Are we in Ephesians chapter 6? And it says, okay, yeah, that's right. Verse 4. Fathers, do not provoke your children to wrath, but bring them up in the training and the admonition of the Lord. Is that when you've done something that's, and we can cause our adult children to get angry. But the key is we're approaching it, fathers, as as not so much an event that you're holding them accountable forever, is that you're saying, look, I want to deal with this now. This upset me. I'm upset about it. I need to voice it to you. But you don't want to put them in a position. You have to do it in such a way. You have to think through the process. Because you don't want to do in such a way that it's going to have an ill effect on your relationship and your ability to speak into their lives the rest of their lives. Psalm 127, verses 3 through 5. Psalm 127. I think I like it better when I write them down. It says, behold, children are a heritage from the Lord. The fruit of the womb is a reward. Like arrows in the hands of a warrior, so are the children in one's youth. Happy is the man whose quiver is full of them, and they shall not be ashamed, but shall speak with their enemies in the gate. Fathers, as I say this, I want you to think back when your kids left. For those of you who have your little kids, I want you to think for the last moment. I have a picture of my 3 kids. That's my favorite picture of all times. I think Rob was probably in 2nd grade. Zach was just a toddler. Rob might have been kindergarten. Zach was just a toddler, and they're all 3 right there. Mindy has on this real pink dress. Zach's sitting there in front of her and smiling, and Rob's behind him. And it's not Rob's fault. He always had bad hair days when he was younger because I never let him cut his hair. But he's there, and it's like, I look at that picture, and it takes me right back to that moment in time that everything my world spun around was my kids. Was that moment, and it allows me to reminisce from there forward. It says, the children of our heritage of the Lord. They are the blessings God gives us to realize, and I remember I was thinking as we started having, I was a weird kid. I know, it's hard to believe, right, Bree? Because normally girls think about these things, guys don't. Because I was thinking, when I was a kid, I had names of children. We never used any of them. But I had names. I mean, I had lists. And I would just... Yeah, well, I had... call him Nebby for short. I would sit and I would think about what's going to be like when I have children. And then I would think about a little bit more, what's going to be like to have grandchildren, and so on and so forth. And it's like, because those are the people that allow me to live forever. Those are the people on this earth that allows my life to have meant something. Is because of my children and now my grandchildren, and someday, not real soon, but soon enough, will be great-grandchildren. So it's like they're my heritage. They're a heritage that God has given me. And so I like that passage because of that. It says, like arrows in the hand of a warrior, so are the children of one's youth. So no matter how old your kids are today, think about your children and their youth. Don't waste time. I'm going to get to this in a minute. One last verse in this power section, then I'm going to move one more section. Let's just go to 1 Timothy chapter 3. And I'm almost done my introduction. Just teasing. 1 Timothy chapter 3. We're going to look at verse 5. And it says this. Let's back up. Let's get a running start at verse 4. One who rules over his whole house well, having children in submission. Now, listen. Some people take that whole word with such wrong authority. What is submission? I never wanted my children afraid of me. I never wanted my children to be so, they had to do exactly everything that I said, because I wasn't always saying the right things. That's why they had a mom, to buffer dad. I think I may have said this before, but there was times my kids come to me and I'll have to admit there was lapses, and I blinked. Sometimes as I raised my kids, I blinked. And they'd ask to go do something, I'd say no. No reason I said no. Then they'd go to mom, because the rule was, between her and I, you had to back up the other one. And so it's like, mom, they go to mom and said, well, what did dad say? He always says, he said no, he always says no. Now the thing is, this day of judgment was coming for me. Because then Debbie would come back and off when the kids didn't know it and say, hey, why'd you tell them no? And if I didn't have a good reason, I had to go back and tell them, what was it you wanted to do earlier? And then give a yes to make it look like they talked me into it. And that's the only way I could sleep in the bed that night, otherwise on the couch. But you don't want them to be so strapped down. And we've seen the stories. We read the stories every day of kids that are abused and beat into submission. Submission comes because of love. True submission comes because of love. True submission to your authority as a father comes because you respect them as individuals too. Now, they're children, but you still got to love them in such a way that they know it. And verse 5 says, "For if a man doesn't rule over his own house, how will he take care of the church of God?" Now, that's a parenthesis in the New King James, and it is that way because they say it's not in the original text. That's a thing that, again, I'm not accountable for what my kids do today. They're in their 40s. They're adults. They're making adult decisions. But it does give me opportunity to speak into their lives again if I feel like I should. Now, the role of a father is different because there's different types of fathers. One is that there's the surrogate. There's the one that is an adoptive father, a stepfather, father because the real father is not around at all. So this is the non-biological. And then there's the biological father and the spiritual fathers. But every one of those fathers have the same responsibility. They have the same responsibility one is to set an example before the kids of what, and as Debbie said, well, I'll get to it here in the next, to set an example on how to live as a husband. If you've got sons, you need to teach your sons' fathers how to be a husband. Because that's important. There are things that we chose early in our marriage, as many of you that have been married a long time probably did too, is that we're not going to do this in front of the kids. They never heard me belittle their mom. They never heard me swear at their mom. They never heard any of that because I didn't want them doing that. I didn't want them thinking that was the right thing to do as a father. And they saw me treat her as an equal. They saw me treat her with love and respect. They saw me treat her as a lady. And that was what I wanted them to see. You need to set an example that as a teacher. Turn over to Deuteronomy chapter 6. Deuteronomy chapter 6. And in Deuteronomy chapter 6, we're going to look at verses 6 through 9. And it says this, "And these words which I command you today shall be in your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise up. And you shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be on the frontlets between your eyes. You shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates." What Jeff is doing with Bennett is exactly what that word says. He's teaching them, and I know you others are. I can watch as Kaylee goes around here and she sings and sings out. She sings louder than any of the rest of us, And it's like she could be a choir unto herself, okay? The thing is that they're teaching. I know that they're being taught those things that this word says we're supposed to do as a father, as parents. "And these words I command you, that you shall teach them diligently." It's not haphazardly. You want them to, when they're on their own, they're going to make a decision. Right now, they're living under your covering. Right now, they're living under your salvation because they're not accountable. But you want them, when they step into accountability as a child of God, that they step into it knowing who God is of their own. As the saying says, there's no grandchildren in the kingdom of heaven. Each one has to come to Jesus of their own. And that's our responsibility to see that it happens as fathers. Then we want to set a child memories that will last a lifetime. We want to give them memories that will last a lifetime. Like I said, I could probably go on, and I didn't have any of those that really written down that I had with my dad. Some will be mistakes that you make and you have made. My guess is my kids could come up here if I allowed them, which I won't. They could come up here and tell you my mistakes. They could tell you the times that they thought I was wrong and actually later proved to be wrong and I had to come back and apologize. There's another thing. If you're wrong, admit it. If you made a mistake, admit it. So they're honest. That was one of the things my dad taught me. Excuse me. My first job worked at Pine Lakes Country Club as a dishwasher. I hate doing dishes to this day because of that job. And I got snowed one night, and the busboys, I rode home with the busboys, these two brothers, and they said, man, Bob, you got to get moving. They were trying to help me. And this one, Doug, said, hey, why don't you just put those big pans away, put them underneath, and nobody will know. They won't catch it for a few days. They'll think somebody else did. That sounded like a good idea. Well, the next day, my brother I just got him a job there not too long after that, and he was going in, he was going to be a dishwasher, and he called me up, he said, hey, they just told me you're fired. And I knew why. I didn't have to ask. I did. I said, why? I knew why. And they said, he said, they said you put a bunch of pans away that were dirty, and they had to redo them all. But dang. So I had then the big test of faith, and I wasn't even a Christian, was to tell my dad what I did. So he got home from work that day. On a Saturday, he got home from work. He says, your consequences have already been served. I'm not going to punish you other than I'm going to tell you what you're going to do. He says, your consequences are you lost your job, but here's what you're going to do. You're going to go out there and apologize to those people because you stole from them. You stole their time, you stole their money, you stole the promise that you would do the job. And so I went out, he drove me out there that night and picked up my brother, and I went in, and the two owners were sitting there, and the head bartender, head waitress, they're all friends, are sitting there. And I walk in, and the owners sort of look at me, and I said, can I say something? And they said, sure. And so I laid out my apology, no excuses. I didn't say why. I just said, I apologize to you. I shouldn't have done that. That was wrong. Just the whole thing. And what was astonishing to me was at the end, they asked me some questions, but at the end of it all, they said, okay, you can have your job back now. Because my dad instructed me that way that time, I found a way to meet up with struggles early in life in a better way than most. So he taught me diligently about many things. Some of the good times, I'll remember the good times. I like the fact that we used to play a lot of games, me and the kids, because Debbie was a nurse and she'd have to work every other weekend. And so on Saturday or something like that, we'd play these games. I'd make up games. I had two boys. There are tons of Matchbox cars in that house. I mean, barrels of them. And there was always tons of pennies around the house. So I made up a game called Penny Cars. You'd like this, Jeff. Penny Cars. And so they would have to, everybody get a portion of pennies, and everybody get so many cars, and there'd be a car lot. But in order to get a new car, you had to buy it, and you had to trade in your old car and things like that. But you had to buy it with your pennies, and when you ran out of pennies, you had no more trades. You know, and I don't remember exactly how. But I asked him one time. I said, "What's your favorite memory?" And all three of them individually said penny cars, and all it was is because it was something that I guess Dad had invented. No matter what, as a father, we can't. No matter what, as a father, we can't blink. As that song says, your babies grew up to be moms and dads. Before you know it, they're out on their own. If you are a young father today, take the time you have with them at that young age, because it goes by too quick. There's not one of us in here that are fathers of adults or teenagers that don't look back and go, oh, I wish I could go back just one day to that day when they all could pile on my lap or we could wrestle around together. There's not one time that day that doesn't go through my brain. Take time to throw the ball. Take time to play with the dolls. Take time to eat that first cake. Take time to tell the stories of your life and of your parents and read to them. Take time to do that. To read a book or to go for a walk or to go fishing or whatever. Just take time. Take time. You're not blinking when you take time. If you're a father of a young adult, 13 through 19, take time to sit and talk. Let them talk. And listen to what they're saying. I don't think I did that enough. But I take time to do that. Take time to just go for a drive. If they're driver's age, I got 3 of them grandkids now. I got driver's license, and I'm too young to have that. But I mean, just take time to go. Yeah, yeah, because some lady at Menards said that. Take time to go for a drive. Let them drive, and let them, just go out and ride with them. Enjoy that time. Take time to be curious and about their lives. What's going on in their world? Listen to them and what they like, they dislike, even though they like Striper. Don't even though they like the Cubs. Take time. And if you're a father of an adult, take time to help when you can with whatever they have need of. Listen instead of giving advice. It's too quick, we want to give advice. Well, if it was me, I'd have done it this way. They really don't want to hear if it was you, they'd have done it this way. They probably know if it was you, you'd have done it this way. But listen to their situations and without giving advice. Pray that you've invested in your children all that you could to carry them through the rest of their lives and through even through your mistakes that you made. Proverbs 22:6 says this, train a child up in a way that he shall go or she shall go, and when they are old, they will not depart from it. Debbie and I stayed on that verse for a lot of time with Rob. And he's told you this. He lived a pretty uneventful life until he came to the Lord. I don't know if that's the right way to say it, actually. It's a pretty eventful life. It's really true. But we stood on that verse because we believed, for better, for worse, for the mistakes we made, that as our kids were growing, they grew up in a Christian home. We made mistakes. We became real authoritative in things. At least I did. But all three of them, we believe that what we instilled in them back there will blossom somewhere here. And it's starting to happen. We like what we see in our children. We want them to be and continue. We like what we see of them as parents and as they raise their children. And so as a father of children. And then one last category. Biological, non-biological, and spiritual. As a father of children here, and father of many spiritual children now, I look at several of them. I have a young man that I brought into the ministry years ago, walking down the hall, said, have you ever thought about doing children's church? And because of that time there and nurturing him along the way, he became nationally known in his ministry. As a spiritual father here, I am proud of my kids. My goal is when God's done with me behind here, that the people that are stepping in line behind me are well past me. And the thing is, most of them right now are well past me. And the key to that whole process is I want for my children, physical and spiritual, the best and more than what I've ever attained in my life. I'm blessed to be the spiritual father here. I'm blessed to be the physical father of 3 and 12 grandchildren. But here is, I think, is more important oftentimes as the physical. Because what we do here as a father, it has a lasting impact and a broader impact across our world. I have 3 children, have 12 grandchildren, 11 here on earth, and those 11 are going to spread their wings and probably never come back to Illinois. I don't know the 3 oldest girls saying, I'm never come back here. Just chalk it up as I'm gone. I don't know what the boys will be like, but the thing is that I expect as that happens, that hopefully the influence as a grandfather, as a father, as a spiritual father, as people branch out and people have gone on. Pastor Rick, been his spiritual father, even though he's older than me, been his spiritual father for a long time. And he's branched out several times and done many things, so many others. The key is today we honor fathers, both biological, both non-biological, and spiritual. We honor them today because this is a day that needs to be given back. Because a lot of times kids don't necessarily saddle up to a dad like they do their moms or their grandmas. It doesn't happen, I tell people all the time, I said, the reason why I have friends is because I married Debbie. It's like, anyway, I don't know how to close this out. I really don't. I just want to say how much I love you, how much it's an honor it is to be, hopefully, your spiritual father and to be a part of your lives. I hope all the fathers in this room today have a blessed day. I hope you all have hope you all got something out of what little bit I've shared this morning. I love you. Have a great week. We'll see you Thursday night and then again